a shotgun?
Welcome back, Vaqueros. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Lockwood 300, which, if you haven't seen my last video, got a pretty massive stealth buff to its mid-damage range in this last update with Season 3 Reloaded. Now, what I want to do with this video is talk about that stealth buff, talk about its insane time to kill, the damage range potential. Is it worth running now the base ammo over Dragon's Breath, or is Dragon's Breath still the way to go for this thing? And of course, we're going to talk about a great class setup to use for this gun. Now, if that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and hop right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, what the buff was. So if you missed my last video, essentially what happened with the Bryson 800 and the Lockwood 300, which they didn't mention in the patch notes, is that in its third range, I think it's its second drop off, there was basically an increase to the damage that you could do in that range. So essentially one shot from a Lockwood 300 out to about 14.1 meters is going to do about 155-ish points of damage, which, if you're math inclined, is enough to do, of course, 300 damage, which is more than enough to kill a person with full plates. And again, that's out to about 14.1 meters with the base gun. So in case you didn't know, before this patch and before this buff, essentially you could only get 2-shot kills out to about 5.8 meters with the base gun, with the base ammo, with the Lockwood. And like I said, now it's out to about 14.1 meters. That is a massive buff, and that is really crazy. And again, that is with no attachments. Now, the thing that's really strong about this gun is its rate of fire. And even though you only have 2 shots and it's very overlooked because of that, its rate of fire is about 170 rounds per minute. Again, these stats are off of sim.gg, go check them out. But since it's 171 RPM, your time to kill is going to be sitting at around 350 milliseconds, which is one of the fastest time to kills in Warzone currently. I think maybe the Magna GS still has a little bit of a faster time to kill. I'm not entirely sure. I think they just nerfed it, so it might be a little bit worse now, but this is without a doubt one of the fastest time to kills in all of Warzone. And before this update, I preached using this thing so much with Dragon's Breath because of that time to kill, and even though it was only 2 shots, a good player can make it work. And now you can get that 2-shot out to about 14 meters with no attachments, or out to about that 18-meter mark with certain attachments. So it is very strong. And again, that's kind of getting close to that SMG range, but with a time to kill that fast, that's kind of absurd. Now, there are a few downsides I gotta point out. Obviously, you only have 2 shots, but the other big thing is you have to be aiming down sights. The issue I've talked about so much in the past with this gun and with the 725 in Warzone 1 was that if you aim down sights, your damage is capped at 4 pellets, which is what most shotguns are, regardless of hipfire or aim down sights. But with the Lockwood 300, if you're only hip firing, your damage is capped at 3 pellets. So essentially, if you're dealing 50 damage per pellet, you can think about if you hip fire, it's 150 damage, but if you aim down sights, it's 200 damage. It's a balancing factor, but it doesn't really work super well in a lot of instances, so you gotta be careful with this thing. It's really rewarding if you're accurate and if you're aiming down sights. So don't try to hip fire this thing with a base ammo. It's just really not recommended. So even though it's got that great range potential now, that's super good and one of the best ranges we've seen for a 2-shot in Warzone history ever, well, is it worth using over Dragon's Breath? And to that, I have to say probably not. And there's a few reasons why. Dragon's Breath overall lets you do more damage, except for in its third range. So essentially, with Dragon's Breath, you're getting about half of that 2-shot kill that you have with the base ammo, but in turn, you get a lot more consistency, you get a little bit more damage, and of course, best of all, that whole hipfire versus aim down sights damage mechanic is gone. It does not affect Dragon's Breath, so that means you can hipfire this thing out to about 9 meters or aim down sights. It's going to do the same damage, and you're going to get pretty damn consistent 2-shot kills. And again, if you're kitting it out for range, it's going to be about that 9-meter mark, which, again, compared to like the 14 to 18-meter mark of the base ammo, it might seem like a little bit, but really, it's just so much more consistent. And even though, again, you're not getting as much range, it's just going to be a lot easier for most people to use. I've seen a lot of people use it, and I get tagged on Twitter and stuff, and it's definitely a very strong shotgun with Dragon's Breath, and that might be the way to go. But I don't want to say that it's not worth using with the base ammo, because to be honest, I've been having a damn good time with it, and it's so fun to catch people off guard so far away with this thing and get a 2-shot kill that just drops them instantly, right? It's just kind of hilarious to me. And of course, there is a little bit of recoil you have to control, but it's not super difficult, especially with the right attachments. But this thing is super good. I want to say that Dragon's Breath is still probably the way to go for this particular shotgun overall, but don't be afraid to use the base ammo now, because it is definitely viable, but you have to be a lot better and you gotta aim down sights. That's really the tough thing here, is that even up close, like past 5 meters, you gotta be aiming down sights or it's just not gonna do it for you. You're not gonna get the 2-shot kill. just promise me if you're using this thing with the base ammo, you're going to aim down sights a lot, because that's going to work so much better, I promise you. So yeah, to kind of sum it up between the two ammo types, Dragon's Breath, half the overall like sort of effective 2-shot range, but it's a lot more consistent, and you don't have to aim down sights all the time, and your damage, like I said, it's going to be a lot more consistent between aim down sights and Hipfire. And of course with the base ammo, a lot more range, like basically double the 2-shot range, but you have to aim down sights and you have to be very accurate. And of course you can't Hipfire with it. So the trade-off is up to you, but I would recommend sticking with Dragon's Breath, I think, for a lot more of the more competitive engagements. But if you want to kind of have fun with it, just try the base ammo, and I promise you, you won't regret it. So for basic buckshot, this is the build I have for you guys to try out. Now, one big thing here is I'm not using the high stock mod. That's because the recoil can be a little bit tricky, and if you're really pushing that range, which is what this build is for, then you really want to be able to land that second shot well. And having the sweet spot stock makes it just a little bit easier, because when you go and you check it out in the firing range, you'll notice it's not nearly as bad, and it can be a little bit more consistent. There's the tuning for that. The 7mm laser, because we want a fast aim down sights time. The 711 barrel we're using instead of the 812, because again, we want a little bit of a faster aim down sight speed with some more range. And the Bryson Series 12 choke for the best tight pellet spread we can get. And the Buck Pro for some more aiming down sights speed. So for Dragon's Breath, it's a little bit different. We can use the high stock mod for this one because it's not going to be pushing out as far. About 9 meters is kind of where your 2-shot is with this. We're going to be using the point G3P laser because hip firing is actually viable with this thing, because again, it doesn't have that weird inconsistency with hip fire damage versus aim down sights. We're using the Matuzak 812 barrel, and there's the tuning for that because this gives you the most range out of all the barrels. Seiken DB107 because it gives you great range and it doesn't hurt your aim down sight speed nearly as much as the GW Max 99. Which gives you about the same range. And then of course we're using Dragon's Breath, and this is going to be a very consistent 2-shot. And the nice thing about this, like I said, there's no inconsistencies with hip fire and aim down sights, so it's a really good gun to use, especially in solos and duos. As for my overall thoughts on this buff, I am very, very happy and pleasantly surprised by it. It works wonders, but of course, that weird aim down sights hip fire mechanic, which I do like in practice, doesn't really work super well on this gun, and it's going to make it very difficult to use for a lot of people. And it's mostly just annoying that I can't really barrel stuff someone, or rather like 5 meters away, and get a 2-shot kill with this thing when I'm hip firing. Just kind of a little bit annoying, so I'd like for that to kind of change, but whatever, it's probably not going to. I'm okay with this for now. It's a fun niche gun to use with the base ammo, and Dragon's Breath makes it a hell lot more consistent. So if that's the way you want to go, then just use Dragon's Breath. And that's just about going to do it for this video, guys. So let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about this massive stealth buff we got to the Lockwood 300? Have you used it yet? Is it really fun? Are you enjoying it as much as I am? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.
Qué padre.